Even though Osamu Tezuka has been popularly ordained the godfather of anime, rightfully so by the way, there are many other figures in the anime industry that are just as important, like Go Nagai. We covered a few titles that have stemmed from his manga, and while they fluctuate in quality, they can't detract from Nagai's personal body of work, which is the dictionary definition of prolific. The man has been working since the late 60s, pumping out manga by the hundreds, which he still makes today in some capacity. But his importance to the medium isn't measured by how long his bibliography is, but by how he has affected the landscape of anime itself. He is credited for creating the super robot genre, paving the way for landmark titles like Gundam and Macross, and for creating the first ecchi manga, Harenchi Gakuen, which was also one of the launching manga for the still-running and popular magazine, Weekly Shonen Jump. What's ecchi, you may ask, if you're trying to play dumb? Well, it's softcore porn. While Japan certainly has a long history of drawing people fucking, as does the rest of the world, it wasn't popularly circulated, and it certainly wasn't available to purchase at local stands. But in 1968, Go Nagai published Harenchi Gakuen, which catapulted him to national attention and infamy. Today, the manga would be looked at as pretty tame, but at the time, both the manga and the resulting anime series was the subject of protests. It became so intense that the distribution of Shonen Jump was being banned from circulation in certain areas of Japan, and it threatened the series into cancellation. So, how did Go Nagai respond to these criticisms and protests? Well, he drew the protesters into the manga and had them kill every single character. I said Nagai was important. I didn't say he was subtle. But the lengths in which he went to defend his work against those who would silence it speaks exactly to the fiber of the man's character. Nagai is a busted fire hydrant of ideas and creativity, managing to capture every drop onto paper as fast as it comes out, and he will be goddamned if he's going to let anybody shut off the water main. Of course, such an attitude towards the creative process can yield interesting results, but there is a nobility to a creator and artist like Go Nagai. He is the closest thing that anime has to a living, breathing creative id. Knowing his backstory casts this weird sort of light on today's subject, Kekko Kamen, a title by which Nagai didn't even mean to create. Originally thought up as a parody of Moonlight Mask, which was basically an anime Lone Ranger, Nagai didn't even strain to come up with a clever title for Kekko Kamen. You see, Moonlight Mask is known as Gekko Kamen in Japan. Gekko, Kekko, and it centers around a masked vigilante woman who fights butt-ass naked against an evil boarding school, headed by a demonic jester called Toenail of Satan. That's the level of cleverness we're working with, people. So Nagai sent in a draft of Kekko Kamen to his editor, expecting him to have a good laugh at such a ridiculous proposal and just forget about it. But he didn't. He in fact loved it, which led to a 5-volume run of the manga. Only Go Nagai, people. So it should only come to pass that an anime adaptation was made of the accidental manga, and who but ADV should pick up the license and dub it for us here in America. Really, it's a match made in heaven. Since it was always meant to be a joke, who gives a shit if ADV went off script to do their usual shenanigans? And the results speak for themselves. We're introduced to the boarding school, known as the Spartan Institute, as Toe Jam here is about to meet his Earl.
Ms. Gestapoco, I have heard much about your performance at the Auschwitz Academy. I'm sure you're aware the Spartan Institute's policy is
to go well beyond the disciplines of so-called progressive schools to reach our goal. Training an elite order of malleable minds through firm punishment.
In less than 3 minutes, we have a jester demon principal and a Nazi dominatrix that's going to be his punishment counselor. You spoil me, Nagai. And it's not long before that Hotse Nazi gets her claws and whip on a poor defenseless schoolgirl, who might as well go nameless considering her sole function is to be the spritle of the show. Still, she performs that function admirably as she's rescued by the one and only Kekko Kamen, sheathed in darkness so that no one can quite figure what she is, let alone who she is. While Spritle has her suspicions on who was the one that saved her, the fact that the Spartan Institute has a masked hero on its premises does not sit well with the faculty, and scheme a plan to smoke her out.
Well, Teacher Ben, you're pretty perverted.
Why, thanks for the compliment. But you're the most perverted pervert of all.
Yeah, that's the truth. Being a pervert has its privileges.
Okay, I'll play your game. What kind of privileges comes with being a pervert. Never having to go within 500 feet of a playground, always getting to meet strangers because you had to introduce yourself to everyone in the neighborhood. So, what is this scheme? Well, they have Spritle strapped to a rotating swastika and have Gestapo here humiliate her until Kekko Kamen's hand is forced and she reveals herself.
Round and round she goes!
If it keeps turning, they'll see everything! Now nobody will ever want to marry me!
Alright. Logically, I know that what's happening here is 10 kinds of terrible, and I've certainly derided anime with similar scenes, or at least scenes that approached this kind of territory, but I just can't take this seriously at all. I think what keeps this firmly within the realm of comedy is just the absurdity of the situation. Besides the Nazi dominatrix throwing knives at a schoolgirl strapped to a rotating swastika, everyone's reactions are either exaggerated lust or misplaced fear. Honey, I'm sure there's a fella out there who's willing to marry you despite your entire school having seen your puss. Hell, it'll probably make a good anecdote during a wedding reception. My greatest fear right now is that the anime has peaked way too early. There's just no way they're going to be able to top themselves here in the first episode, but I certainly want to see them try. The plan works as Kekko Kamen once again arrives, this time in full display, so to speak. She quickly makes work of Gestapo's goons before turning her sights onto Toe Jam.
Principal Big Toenail of Satan! Have a peek at my secret technique! Open! Thighs! Jump!
I can certainly think of worse ways to go than being bronco busted by a naked luchadora. In fact, I think that's how Suave wanted to go. Add a tub of jello and have 200 women perform a sapphic orgy at my wake, and then you'd be on the right track. Well, speaking of shoehorned lesbianism, it's time for Kekko and Gestapo to throw down, but Kekko has her pegged, and not in that way, fuckos. She figures that Gestapo secretly wants to be punished, so she just beats her with her nunchaku, and that does it. So, her weakness was being hit with a weapon. Brilliant! And if Gestapo's theme was a little too subtle for you, she even faints in the shape of a swastika. Just chuck everything you can at the wall and see what sticks, why don't ya? But the day is saved, thanks in no small part to Kekko Kamen. But what of that other woman that Spritle thought was our masked heroine?
The principal and Teacher Ben were all excited about a pair of panties that were stolen from my room 3 days ago. Why did Kekko Kamen have them? And will we ever uncover her true identity? Keep watching if you want to find out more. Okay? See ya.
Spoiler alert, you never find out. In the manga, Kekko Kamen was actually several women working together to throw off suspicion, but the OVA series never got that far into the run. Instead, it opts for a limited episodic approach, which means when you watch the first episode, you've seen the other 3 episodes. Toe Jam targets Spritle, the punishment counselor of the day cooks up a new way of humiliating Spritle, and Kekko Kamen saves the day. But I'm certainly not complaining about the formula, especially since it works so well for the OVA. Also, because it's only 4 episodes long, so the series doesn't overstay its welcome. It comes in like a hurricane and leaves just as fast, with only minor lasting damage. To cover all 4 episodes would just be me repeating myself 4 times over, so instead, I'm going to talk about my favorite episode of the entire OVA, which just happens to be the 2nd episode. After such a humiliating defeat, Toe Jam has been having nightmares about Kekko Kamen literally crushing his balls, so he decides enough is enough and calls out for a new punishment counselor, who takes the form of a strapping hunk of a man. He's the absolute idol of all the girls in the school, and guess who Senpai just noticed?
Wait till you feast your eyes on that, Kekko Kamen.
Well, he's got a great body, sure, but he's gay.
Oh, that's obvious.
Okay, was he sucking some dude's cock and I didn't notice? What was it about him that was so obviously gay that he didn't immediately try to fuck one of the schoolgirls? You're gay until you're proven straight?
It's the muscles that matter.
Say what?
Don't you know that a hot babe with great big tits can never resist a big old muscle man?
Ain't that the truth? everyone knows that women love a man that looks like a sentient walking tumor and has skin the texture of beef jerky. Makes their panties like fucking Niagara Falls. But alas, poor Spritle is smitten with the charismatic musclehead, and he takes advantage of it, cornering her while she's alone.
You should have confidence in the fact that you're beautiful. Your smile is almost as beautiful as my bulging biceps are. See?
You're so gorgeous.
Of course, but so are you.
Suave, I think we found your long-lost brother.
Quiet! I'm trying to take notes.
The mood is quickly broken when Brother Suave here decides to activate the Inspector Gadget molestation hands, complete with cartoonish Mickey Mouse gloves. Sure enough, Kekko Kamen comes a-knockin', but she might have just met her match, as he's just too hunky!
So, am I beautiful?
Too beautiful.
That's right. As awe-inspiring as a statue of a naked god, wouldn't you say? Oh, and how about this? Deltoids! Triceps! Massive traps!
I can't resist. I think I'm gonna come.
I don't think I have anything to add to that. I just love this ridiculousness so much.
What did I say about not talking? Please, reveal your secrets to me, Master.
Kekko Kamen is defeated, but manages to squirrel away for the moment. Meanwhile, Brother Sage has Spritle in the punishment chamber, and if the animation didn't look terrible before, it demands your attention at this point. Look, the chains aren't even connected to anything in the frame. In fact, this whole anime is pretty shoddy when it comes to its art. Body proportions and perspective are barely paid attention to, it over-relies on speed lines and janky choreography, and there's this undeniable feeling of cheapness all throughout the OVA. I'd imagine that a budget for an anime of this kind of subject matter wouldn't net a huge amount of backing, but this is just embarrassing. But for the purposes of comedy, it doesn't really hurt the experience. In fact, it kind of lends itself towards a unique identity. It's the difference between an Edgar Wright-directed comedy and a John Landis-directed comedy. While Wright loves to pay close attention to insignificant, seemingly useless details, and utilizes camera movement and blocking to accentuate a joke or to even create and tell a joke, Landis is purely utilitarian, only caring that the scripted joke is on screen and in focus. Both have made some of the greatest comedies of all time, and both thanks to their own distinct directorial style. The same goes for Kekko Kamen. It's supposed to be a broad sophomoric sex comedy about a woman who dresses up in a mask and beats up sadomasochist school teachers with nunchaku. I really don't think anyone was sweating bullets making sure that this looked Studio Ghibli good. Still, it would be nice if they could get body proportions correct, but if you're going to make fun of crappy Sentai shows, might as well look like one. To goad Kekko Kamen out of her hidey hole, Toe Jam and Brother Suave began broadcasting their torment of Spritle, making her do the Charleston, you fiends! This display is simply too much for Kekko Kamen, and she busts in once again to save the day, but this time she has a secret weapon. A blindfold! How useful is your manly body now, Brother Suave? Well, it turns out, not useful at all, and he goes down for the count. As I stated before, the individual episodes followed this basic plot structure, so by now, you should be able to decide for yourself if this OVA is worth your time or not. It's unapologetic, bawdy, and irreverent as anything that anime has ever produced, but it all works in a sort of consequences be damned sort of way. It's certainly not for everyone, or even most people, but it's entertaining as hell, if you don't mind asking yourself, what in the hell am I watching? Nagai, you insane glorious bastard, you make some utter shit sometimes, but you never make boring shit, so wear that with pride. Well, I'm due for another break, ladies and gentlemen, but I'll be back before you know it. So, till next time.